do have a public input time scheduled to kick us off. So if any members of the public wish to address the board, we encourage you to walk up to the microphone. You can state your name and your town of residence, and then you can address the board. Seeing none, let's go ahead and continue. We have our consent agenda items number 1, 2, and 3. Do we have any board members who would like to pull any of those to discuss, or can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3?
I'll make a motion to accept consent agenda 1, 2, and 3.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3 are passed. We are up to the principal's report. Mr. Lecklater.
Thank you very much and good evening. Happy February. So we have had a lot happening at the village school over the last several weeks. I'm going to start with just as I do each month, sort of segment out the priorities sort of the year, kind of the things that we're focused on. And that would be personalization of learning, community, and SEL, social emotional learning. So I'll kind of hit a few things under each of those categories, though I did want to start with a quick update on the kindergarten room. As you know, we had a flood in that room back a few weeks ago. Actually, Roger, the facilities director, and myself and board members were able to see the room prior to the meeting tonight. We've made a lot of progress. The room was unusable. If you didn't hear, unusable. We moved the kindergarten class over to the Art Spanish room, and Art Spanish has been on a cart mobile going into the homeroom classrooms since the flood. So so the bad news is that it did take the room out for these days and weeks. The good news is a few things. One, amazing community and rallying around a challenging situation. I've seen that with staff. Miss Philibot is the kindergarten teacher that was affected. Just comes in, does not miss a beat with the kids, with her instruction. It's been amazing to watch. Also, Miss Christie, Miss Montalbano, now on a cart on wheels, have done a great job of adjusting and flexing their instruction into the classrooms. And also, teachers been extremely supportive and accommodating as, again, you know, Spanish and Art are moving into those rooms. So update on the work in there. The new floor is going to be put in the next few days. We're hoping that work will start. The painting is just about done, and the drywall has already been completed. So at this point, we're looking at probably another couple of weeks before the room can be used with students. And then there will still be some woodwork that needs to be done over the following weeks there. So progress is being made, and it again has been a rallying point for a number of our staff, and I've been very appreciative of that. So this is Kindness Month at Mont Vernon Village School, and we have been soaring, as you know, this year. The focus of this month has been the O in SOAR, others first, kindness. And we now have what we call SOAR slips, where we catch students doing something right. And in this case, it's kindness. And if you have a chance to take a look at a bulletin board outside the office, we are forming the word SOAR out of the others first recognitions over the last couple of weeks actually now. It's everything from holding a door, picking up trash, helping a teacher. Actually, we've had staff recognized, so it's been a really positive thing for the climate and culture. And we've just seen a lot of random acts of kindness. We're not looking for students to ask for these recognitions. but we want to catch them in the act. So that's been fun. I want to just talk quickly about SEL. Last month, we did talk about our COVID numbers a little bit, and question was raised regarding, what kind of caretaking and follow-up are we doing with students? Ms. Gerard did put some of that in her report this month, and she's very deliberate about how she structures and delivers her classroom guidance. As you know, there is a curriculum to that, but she really tailors it around things that are going on that are relevant to our students. So that has been happening for a few weeks. Also, our classroom teachers during morning meeting have been doing great check-ins with students, very positive and individualized. If there are conversations that need to happen, those things are happening. I mentioned the Kindness Month. I think that has brought just a universal recognition around taking care of each other and even taking care of ourselves. So I feel like there have been some things over the last few weeks that have been intentional and positive on the SEL front. This week is also Counseling Week. We're putting a recognition around our counselor, Ms. Gerard, and her work. But she has put together a Spirit Week this week, and that's been fun. So today was Theme Day. Tomorrow is Favorite T-Shirt Day, and we had Tie-Dye Day. So some fun spirit pride things to bring spirit to the school. Real quickly, personalization. So we are at the midpoint in the year. We're actually day 100 tomorrow, so we're a little past. And we do a lot of mid-year check-ins with students. We do that through our Niwa assessment, and we have just completed Niwa, and now we'll be having follow-up conversations around data analysis and individual student growth related to Niwa. Our MTSS team, our multi-tiered support team, meets weekly, as you know, and the focus right now of our conversations are going to be around data analysis, looking at our individual student growth, interventions that may be now necessary or not necessary based on student data. We also are now piloting our individual student plans. We're at the infancy still of the actual pilot with students, but we are now moving that forward. And I want to recognize Ms. Brown and Ms. Holm specifically for their work on that pilot. And just one other area that we had talked about last month was our specials. Our specials team came and presented last month, did a nice job. And out of that presentation, we had a conversation around what are some of the specific needs of our specials. And I met with them. We are forming our top 10 list that was asked for. They're very pleased that was asked for, by the way. And I will come to you next month with more specifics around prioritization and costs related to those items. So it was a very positive conversation, and we'll have at least 10 items next month. So thank you. In terms of community right now, we have our PTA is sponsoring Carnation Grams. We did have a very bad joke today related to the spirit of Valentine's Day. Just saying. But the Carnation Grams were on sale today at lunch and will be on sale tomorrow at lunch. And also, I wanted to just mention Ms. Garrity, our librarian, our school librarian, worked with the town library the last couple of days, students making paper houses for a community display that will happen very soon. So thank you to Miss Joanne, Miss Bonnie from the library, and Miss Garrity for working together on what was a fun experience, a fun day for our kids. So the last thing, I just wanted to thank our staff. We had a very productive late arrival yesterday, and the focus of late arrival yesterday was critical friend groups. And the purpose of critical friend groups is really supporting each other around some of the challenges that we may have in our work and coming up with constructive solutions to some of those challenges. I sat in on both groups. One focused a lot on writing, and it was a really, really positive conversation. One of our teachers had recently gone to a writing workshop and had some really usable strategies that she shared with our team. And then the other group was talking about some different management strategies, also really positive and productive conversations there. So some good work yesterday during the late arrival, and we're busy here. Things are very positive and going well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, can I just mention the baskets? So I wanted to recognize our staff, wanted to present you with these and thank you for your work as board members. We know that you put in tremendous amount of time, but even more than that is the passion behind the work that you do and the care for us as a school, but our students particularly. So thank you on behalf of our staff. Thank you for your work, and hope you can enjoy a few treats there. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd do the little heart thing if I could, but no, thank you. So Tom, I heard so many good things that you highlighted in your report, and one of the things that I have a question about is the critical friends group. Does that go across grades, or is that something that's just used within a particular grade in a classroom? Or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, so it's actually, the groups are developed at the beginning of the year. It's a mix. It's a mix of grade levels and content, so that the lens is really a mixed lens. And it's not necessarily the folks that you work with next door every single day. Okay. So there's a lot of different skill in the room and different lenses that can help support that. I meet with the grade level teams every week, and we have conversations specifically around grade level needs. But this is a different lens because it brings together different expertise, skill, and even in this case, somebody had gone to a training that was very relevant to the group. So it's meaningful and it's really very relevant work. Actually, Miss Maddie's in our audience and does a lot of work with our critical friend groups and the organization of that. But yeah, it is mixed and very, very positive and constructive type conversations.
Great, thank you for that clarification. It sounds like a great process. Do any other board members have comments or questions for Principal Lecklater?
All right, just a couple of quick questions. What steps are we doing to prepare the kids for Niwa? I know it's coming up here next week or the week after.
Yeah, so actually Niwa just concluded, and so there's a couple things we do. I mean, the teachers go over test-taking strategies. For some students, it can be Niwa, your Niwa, the
yeah,
test.
You've got in here that Niwa is coming up on the 24th through the 28th.
Yeah, okay. So we talk about test-taking strategies. We talk about taking your time, checking your answers over. The students are on the, one of the things is it's a digital test, it's an online test, web-based test. So we want to make sure they understand the tools, that they understand just how the test is configured. But it's also that we want it to reflect things that they're doing in their classroom on a regular basis anyway. So teachers are aware of, the nature of the questions leading up to that. It's more about just how to take a test and strategies around that and keeping students calm and not getting anxious. And we are very deliberate around the setting of the test. For some students, that may look like a pullout in a quieter space. But it's very individualized. So we're working with counselors and teachers on what the best setup for that for each kiddo would look like.
Nice. And then our meeting last month, we asked for the specials to come up with sort of a top 10 list. Any progress on that?
Yeah, so we do.
I was thinking about doing a sponsor a special PTA people. I think that would be a phenomenal thing to get the community engaged in. That top 10 list, maybe we can get some community members to provide some support there. So do we have that list already, or is
yeah, so
still...
I mentioned that I met with the team. We have the list. We're still working on prioritizing and actually putting a cost to some of those items. We want to make sure that the costs are accurate and prioritized. I'll come back to you in March with the actual specific costs of each item. They were very honored to be asked and pleased to be asked. And felt very supported from that last meeting, the presentation and the response to their presentation. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And then very last question from my perspective is the extracurricular activities, right? So we've got that stuff highlighted in the principal's report. How is attendance at those so far? Is it still, are some of them more lighter than others? Like how's theater club going? Chess club, I've got a picture of that in here. Are these being well attended and well received?
Yeah, thank you. I've been really excited about our co-curricular programming. You know, the last couple of years have been a challenge for kids around just being social with each other. And just watching, I wish we could show it off. The Theater Arts Club has put together their props for the upcoming performance. Just watching those students, the work that they do, and this is just where they can kind of like let loose and just they have their interest, and just watching them in that environment. The chess club, kids just thriving in that environment. The drama club, we have a parent volunteer coming in, Miss Anderson, working with those kids. So the numbers are really good. There's been a lot of activity. And I think that it's something that we really missed out on for the last couple of years. So having that back, I feel like there's sort of a new energy around it, because it just hasn't been the same for the last couple of years. So yeah, it's been really, really good. And we're hoping to have an in-person performance here. Oh, and chorus as well is going well. Miss Ward is the advisor for that.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I just had a couple of things. One, I just wanted to say I was so impressed with the test culture that we have here, because my child was excited to take I have never in my extensive educational history been excited to take a standardized test, but they're excited to do it. And that's really an impressive and special thing, I think. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And the question I had was, I know DHHS has changed their COVID reporting guidelines for schools. So it's moved to a weekly model. So I was wondering if that has like lessened the workload for Nurse Deppen, and how, if we are still updating our COVID dashboard in like more or less real time.
Yeah, so first I will just say on the test front, I have to give it to the teachers and how they work with each student. It really is a testament to the personalization piece. The students really understand that they have a goal that they're working toward. And the goal is actually, it's mid-year, but it's end of year. So it's kind of like, this is the checkpoint, but this isn't the end of the road, right? Kind of thing. And so they contextualize it really positive for the kids. And even, not every kid hits their goal, but even those conversations, the nature of it is so supportive and positive that, like you say, the students really do have this eagerness. There is a little bit of a competitive drive inside them, I think, to try to like exceed their goal or exceed the number. But thank you for that recognition. As far as the COVID front goes, and Ms. Deppen is in our audience, and thank you, Ms. Deppen, for the ongoing work. Our numbers overall, just when we said, yeah, they're really down, I'll be honest, they popped up a little bit. We had a couple, I think you saw my messages, some of you in second grade, so the numbers popped a little bit there. I mean, overall, the numbers have been better, definitely trending better overall. I think that in terms of like what we do, I mean, the guidance is different now in terms of the weekly instead of the daily. But in terms of the messaging, I will still put messaging out like I have been, and Ms. Deppen and I are constantly in communication, even on Saturdays or whatever pops up. But I would say overall, being that the numbers are what they are, it's still, it's still a little bit of a level of hold your breath and hope that the trend is, kind of going the right direction. We'll stay there. But I think that we are in a better place right now.
And the COVID dashboard, is that still updated at either a daily or a real time versus a weekly with the state guidelines?
I believe that is, Kim, that's still the expectation daily for the COVID our internal COVID dashboard. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it is still updated by the nurses daily. So the COVID dashboard, that's a spreadsheet that the nurses actually update that automatically goes to the website. So that is still updated daily. and then we just don't have to report to DHHS until the end of the week. So I don't know, it might be a few weeks to figure out if that actually minimizes much work for Kim. I'm not sure that it will, but it will be interesting to see. Oh, well, okay, good. Mhm. Good. 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 Thank you, Kim. That's helpful.
Thank you for the update. Any other questions for Principal Lecklater? Pete, you good? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are up to our MVVS room space study. The board had asked our facilities director and Principal Lecklater and the administrative team to just do a review of the space use here at the village school. So we do have that in our packet. Tom, were you prepared to speak to that, or?
Yeah, we both certainly can
Thank you.
speak to that. Tom, Roger, and I all met. We walked the building and really talked, really looked at all of our needs and looked at the spaces. And we did include a map in the board agenda packet. And the black text in the map is current. The red is what we are proposing for any possible changes. Tom, did you want to check through them?
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to I'll go down through the document and highlight the current space usage and then the new purpose for that space. And certainly, interrupt me as I go through this. But I'll start with the faculty break room. And so, first, just in context, so there were a lot of spaces that were repurposed as a result of COVID. And so for the last couple of years, those spaces have become different purposes. And in looking at this, we really want to start with, what are our goals? What is the purpose of the space, but also, obviously, what is best for our students? So we didn't just say, well, this will just go back to what it was. We wanted to really look at it objectively and say, what are the needs of the students, and then where does the space fit that need best in our school, in our building? In many cases, as you will see, because of the design of the school, some of those spaces do go back to the way they were, and so we have notes on the side, and if you have questions. But so the faculty break room, that is currently the room right near the library, right across from the library. That will become a special ed services space. Currently, special ed services is a shared space with the math specialist, and even at times we have paraprofessionals working with students sometimes in that space. So it is a very multi-purpose space right now. And so special ed services will have that faculty room, break room space next year. The faculty break room will be where the current health office is. So the health office is outside the main office area, and you can see that on your map, but that will go back to what was the faculty break room space. The teacher workroom, which is down the main hallway after the office, that will become our school counselor office. And one of the reasons why we're looking at that space for the school counselor is it does have close proximity to the main office and the nurse's office, also the school psychologist, what will be in that hallway. So when we look at some of the mental health needs and social emotional needs of our students, having the school counselor in that same area, that hallway area, seems to make a lot of sense for our students. So that teacher workroom becomes the school counselor office. The workroom not to be confused with the teacher workroom, but the workroom, which is literally adjacent to the main office, is currently being used. It is kind of a multi-purpose space, but it is currently being used for special ed space primarily during the day. That will go back to what it was originally used for, which was the teacher workroom. Our school psychologist currently is in the original health office. The school psychologist will move to the current counselor, school counselor. So where Anna is right now will be the school psychologist office. And as I mentioned, when we look at social emotional needs of students and those folks who are mostly dedicated to that work and collaborating around that work, having the school psychologist in that space seems to make the most sense for students. I mentioned the school counselor office. And then probably the biggest challenge is our music program. And I know the question has come up a few times already this year. So I'll just start by saying there is no ideal space for music. And Ms. Ward and I have talked quite a bit this year about her space and the nature of her instruction. And we really took a long look at this, Roger, Christina, and I, and what makes the most sense. And one of the things we looked at was the art Spanish room. And we talked about that and we thought about that. And while that space could be used for music, the challenges around that space, most schools design their music room so that it is separate from the regular classrooms for a number of reasons. One is storage is a little bit different when it comes to music and drums and guitars and those kinds of things. But the other is just the nature of music class. I just remember when I was in music class, I was a percussionist and I like to bang drums very loud. And I don't know if the reading teacher would have been appreciative of that next door. So just having the music program in that classroom space where there's other learning spaces that are sort of the nature of those quieter becomes a challenge. Also, if we do that, now we're moving, most likely moving art and Spanish around into classrooms. Not as big of a challenge, honestly, with Spanish, but definitely a bigger challenge with art. Just the nature of that. I joked the first day that the art teacher was going into classrooms that she was doing finger painting that day. So teachers, it's not going to be a big deal, just a little finger painting on their desk. But the nature of art class is just different. So the other option was having music go into rooms, having it go into classrooms. We run into the same challenges around the nature of music, but we also run into challenges around a teacher being mobile with guitars and percussion instruments and various supplies like that. So then we came back to what is right behind us, the music room. And Ms. Ward has done a nice job of cleaning up this space, organizing this space, making it feel more like a classroom-ish kind of a space, though I know it's not. One of the things we talked about in keeping this on the stage would be having some dividers, even maybe some barriers that would sort of keep the sound a little bit more absorbed on the space. She does sometimes flow down into this area down here. So depending on the nature of the activity, but making that feel a little bit more closed off and some of that sound absorbed there. The closet over here is actually very useful to Jackie, and she was able to organize and clean that up. So that has been a benefit, actually having that storage and that organized space and supplies to her instruction. But in the end, we came back to this space probably makes the most sense for where we are right now with our needs and the number of classrooms, the number of other needs, special ed and other needs. So that's the overview. I'm sure there's questions. Christine, did you have anything else?
No, the only other point, this certainly is a draft at this point in the year. We anticipate it being pretty set. Our goals were really to make sure that we had enough small group instruction space for students and for teachers, and that really was prioritized. And then, placing people where it made most sense in the building. And really the original art music room, which is now a kindergarten room, that really is, if you're looking at the building itself, where is the best space that's kind of separate? That is that best space, but that is our largest classroom and what made the most sense for kindergarten to go into that room. So unless we, had less number of students at some point, I do feel like music makes the most sense here on the stage. We've got a wonderful carpet, which we're actually excited you guys would be in this room tonight so that you could see the space. We really tried to make it a true classroom space for her. And this rug, she said, has made all the difference because kids sit in the spots and they actually stay in those spaces. So that's been a huge help for her. And we've really been working closely with Jackie to try to find out, what else can we get for you? Is there some other need that you have to make this space more usable? And as Tom mentioned, the closet, it's amazing. And, when we recess right before our deliberative session, you're welcome to take a look back here or look in the closet. We thought that might actually be helpful, and we're happy to answer questions or for you to see that space more, and then certainly we can answer questions too when we reconvene from the board meeting as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the thoughtful report and for the consideration that you put into the space. I'm just going to pass it over to any board members who have specific questions about the report or questions about the allocation of space. I know it's
So question is with regards to the master schedule. So do we have the capability of using the existing kindergarten classroom C4 into a /art/music space like it used to be, and not have necessarily the overlap, and then possibly use Spanish as a push-in program, moving the kindergarten over into one of our first grade classrooms, and then moving either the third or the second grade class to the current Spanish room? The reason why I think that is a good move is because it literally will create a space that is really designed for education. The stage is not. To be blunt, if my kid was doing a course lesson or some sort of musical history lesson up on the stage, the echo of this room is crazy, gym going on, lunches getting started, our kitchen staff working hard, like those constant interruptions I think would impede or could impede the educational experience. So like, talk to me about why that wouldn't be possible.
I'll start and Tom can certainly jump in. Music and PE are on different days of the week, which is why we have them both in this. Can you hear me okay? Better? Music and PE are on opposite days. So PE is Monday through Wednesday and they use this space, and then Thursday and Friday, music uses this space. Art and music happen to be on the same days because of the specials and the part-time schedule. So it's a little bit tricky, trying to put those puzzle pieces together with space. The music room, certainly we could move kindergarten, but moving kindergarten to that classroom was intentional because of the size. Kindergarten is required to have a larger space, and we wanted to make sure that it was an appropriate space similar to the other kindergarten room. The other thing is kindergarten gets together often. They do joint lessons and activities all the time. So having the kindergarten classrooms near each other was also a priority for us. And that was in the original design when we moved to full day kindergarten and 2 kindergarten classrooms. We took that space, 1, because it was the largest, and 2, because it was closest to the other kindergarten classroom. So I would worry that we'd lose a little connection. Just because it's so easy for them to get together, we'd lose a connection if we moved one of the kindergarten spaces to first grade. And then no matter what, there'll be a ripple effect with one of our specials then being on a cart, just because of the number of days of weeks. So if music moved into the classroom to share with another special, either Spanish or art would then need to be on a cart because of when they happen. I don't know if that answered your question or if Tom has more.
Yeah, but working with the master schedule, I think we could accommodate some of that stuff so the overlaps don't necessarily happen and the space could be empty at the optimal time, right? And so let's say between 9 and 10, art is using the space. Between 11:30 and 12, music is using the space, and vice versa, or back and forth. It's just, I want to see if we can work in any way possible to get instruction off the stage, because it's just not a classroom.
Yeah, so the way the schedule is done, which we'd have to, certainly put our heads together and see if we could come up with a revamped master schedule. We have 2 specialists in the building on any given day, and they are teaching the 2 grade levels at the same time. So those 2 grade levels are able to collaborate and have a prep together. So they're always happening at the same time. So we'd have to rethink what that looks like. And we only ever have 2 specialists in the building on any given day for that. But we might need to look at, like, art and technology. That's never been a specials rotation, what that might look like. So we'd have to definitely, go back and redesign that. We were concerned even about, putting music in any of the classrooms just because of the noise. And in prioritizing and looking at all of our spaces, we really felt like this is the best for not disrupting other classes. And in trying to design this space to make it more of an instructional space had been our goal, but we can certainly look at the master schedule.
Thank you. The next question I've got is in terms of like a conference space for parent-teacher conferences. Where's the space for that now? Are we only going to be doing Zoom and remote for those sessions? I see a small conference room that's actually in there, but we get a team of teachers, an educator, a para, the special ed group, maybe a advocate, 2 parents, and hopefully inviting the students in the upper grades. That's just far too many people for that small space. And looking at the map here, there is no conference facility available anymore.
Yeah, the current conference room, as you probably know, is right adjacent to my office right there. And that would currently stay the conference room. If need be, we would probably have to move into one of those other spaces like the guidance office. I mean, she does have a table area there, but we would have to get creative and move to another space if it was a bigger meeting involving more people. That conference room, if we maximize it, there's been some, I mean, right now there's kindergarten stuff in there, but if we maximize that space and look at maybe some different furniture or something, I think we can probably get more use out of it, more efficiency out of it. Just looking at maybe how we lay it out with the furniture in there. That arrangement's a little tight with the current furniture arrangement.
Thank you. And the last is more commentary, and I know we're going to be hearing a better presentation, or not better, but more intense presentation after our deliberative session with regards to the future of the building. I don't want to say we're at a breaking point now, but it's very clear that we're running out of space. But the school is designed for 250, 260 kids. So we're nowhere near that, and we've actually had some kids unenroll over the past month. So, like, talk to me a little bit about sort of the current context of, hey, the school is designed for 250 to 270. We seem to be stretched at 215. How does that, work out?
So we certainly could accommodate more students in each of the classrooms. The classrooms are certainly large enough. We have a small class size, but I think, over the years, education has changed where, we have more special educators in our building. We have more interventionists supporting our students. So the building is really, it's those small group instruction spaces that have become a greater need. And really, we're actually in a closet today, looking at one of the closets and saying, hey, they use a closet like this at Wilkins for instruction. Should we be looking at redesigning this closet? So small group instruction spaces are really what we don't have as much as up here compared to what a brand new building. You would be building small group instructional spaces. You would be building more of them. So we certainly could accommodate more students. I think our challenge is finding all those spaces for our student services and our supports for students. So in kind of filling all those small group instruction spaces, we then don't have a lot of flexibility. And when the building was built, and I was just speaking with one of our community members. I think the kindergarten was built in 2000, and that was an addition to have kindergarten here when the building was built. And I know there were multiple additions put on this building. We didn't have kindergarten. Then in 2000, that one kindergarten classroom was built because the vision was half-day K. And then when our vision changed to full-day K, it's just we start then expanding and expanding. It's really programming has expanded, where the building actually could accommodate a larger number of students if we needed to. I don't know if that helps. Did you have more for that, Tom?
Is there any other board questions or comments on that survey? Thank you. Thank you for the thoughtful discussion, and perhaps we can get some updates kind of as things progress and the year continues with how that space transition happens.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, we are up to our public input time 2 of 2, right on time, actually, 6:50. So I will remind members of the public that we welcome you to address the board. If you'd like to do so, this is your opportunity, your second opportunity of the evening. You can come up to the microphone, simply state your name, your address, town of residence, and we'd be happy to entertain any comments from you at this time. Seeing none, I will go ahead and bring us to recess. Can I have a motion to recess this meeting of the Mont Vernon Village School Board so that we can participate in the deliberative session, and then we would come back for our middle school study committee presentation?
Make a motion, we recess?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. This meeting is in recess until the deliberative session at 7 p.m.
I'll ask if everybody that's here has checked in, if they are a voter, if they've checked in and gotten a green card. The green cards will be used for voting. Looks like everyone has, do you have a green card? So the green card is at the supervisors of the checklist in the corner there. Well,
Yeah, somewhere.
Christine is here, yeah.
Oh, it's there, yeah.
all right. So hello and good evening, everyone, and thank you for being engaged in the school and in your community and taking part in this most democratic form of government. Or almost most. I guess school district meeting was a little more in my heart, but this is just as good. My name is Pete King. Can everyone hear me okay with a mask? I can do that. I can do that. All right. Yeah, I can do that. I live at 36 Kendall Hill Road, and I'm your school district moderator, and I'm going to moderate the meeting tonight. Because of COVID, my rule, and it's not a school rule, I understand, but it's my rule that people in the meeting will wear a mask. If people do want to choose to take a mask off to speak at the microphone, I think that would make it easier for people to understand as well. So this is also being broadcast on Zoom for people at home. People at home, however, cannot vote, cannot comment on any of the articles that we're gonna do today. And I want to thank the SAU and particularly Brian Miller for helping out on the IT here, the village school staff for setting up the meeting for us today. Before we start the meeting, I'd like it if we could rise and I'll say a few words and then we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance. So, we gather to make decisions for our community and schools. May we use our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral. As we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance of what is best for the community and our fellow citizens. Thank you. Now if you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So I'm going to ask a question. Is there anyone who has not been to a deliberative session in the past? There's one. Okay, so I may explain a little bit of what we're doing, and for some of you folks who've been here before, maybe I'll skip some of it, but there is a copy of the moderator's rules. They're similar to Robert's Rules of Orders, but this is your meeting, and they're basically the rules that have been adopted year in, year out, and we'll follow them. If there's something that this body doesn't like, then it's your meeting to change. We'll do some introductions. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Christine Landerweil to introduce her administrative team.
Thank you. On my far left, we have Allison Tamposi, who is our school district attorney, Amy Facey, our business administrator. In the audience, we have Tom Lecklider, our principal. I know Brian Miller was already introduced. He is our director of technology, and we appreciate his support tonight. All the way on the far side, we have Danae Murata, our board secretary, and Autumn Gardenia, our clerk.
And I'll ask Sarah Lawrence to introduce the school board.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Lawrence, and I am the school board chair. To my far left is Mr. Stephen O'Keefe. Mr. Pete Eckhoff is our vice chair. To my right is Miss Jessica Hinckley, who is our secretary this year. And finally, on the far right is Miss Kristen Clark.
Okay, thank you. So let's begin. The work tonight is to decide the wording, including dollar amounts where appropriate, on articles on which all registered voters are going to have the opportunity to weigh in on basically a month from tonight on or today on March 8th. You'll be able to do two things today. We're going to explain and debate each warrant article. And then we can take, second, there's one of two courses of action. We can either accept it as being, in which course there's no action that needs to be taken and it will appear in the warrant, or we could amend it. If the body decides to amend it and the body approves that amendment, then that's what'll go on the ballot. Just one basic rule, I'm not going to accept an amendment to an amendment. We have to solve an amendment before we go on to the next one. I have a whole page in here of rules for COVID-19, but I'm going to skip them because a year and a half into this or 2 years into it, I think we know what the rules are. And everyone's wearing a mask and we're socially distant here, so thank you. So I guess at this point, I'll ask the assistant superintendent to give an address on the school.
Thank you. I'm so honored that I get to work with the amazing staff and students at the Mont Vernon Village School. Last year, we had to make significant changes to our programming and our school structure in order to accommodate both an in-person and remote option for our students. Our teachers were flexible and able to quickly pivot to a dual modality school. Two of our interventionists became remote teachers along with one of our 6th grade teachers. Not only did the year require flexibility, it also required our staff to be a truly collaborative team, supporting students as they moved in and out of that remote environment. Despite the many challenges last year, our teachers hit the ground running and really were able to sustain momentum throughout the entire school year, really keeping pace supporting students throughout the year. They were determined to ensure students made the catch-up growth that they needed to make after those 3 months of remote learning the previous school year. Not only did our students make catch-up growth last year, they far exceeded our expectations for growth. This growth was seen across both modalities, with our in-person learners as well as our remote learners. We're truly humbled and in awe of our teachers and the incredible work they did last year with our students. They were able to ensure our students were on track to meet grade level expectations. When last year started, we were most concerned about our students with math. Nationally, we were told that that was where students were going to need the most support. And this past fall, with our NWEA scores, we learned that every single one of our grade levels exceeded their target growth in math from last fall to this fall. And for individual student growth in math, all of our grade levels had projections between 67% of students meeting their target growth to 80% of students meeting target growth, and the norm is 50%. And on our state assessment, last spring in math, we went from 52% of our students meeting or exceeding grade level expectations in 2019, which was the last year they took the state assessment due to COVID, to 70% of our students meeting or exceeding grade level expectations. With those scores, the village school went from 139th in the state across all elementary schools to 16th in the state. Yeah. And that's out of 280 elementary schools in the state, or approximately 280. For English language arts, we went from 73% of our students meeting or exceeding grade level expectations on the state assessment in 2019 to 80% of students meeting or exceeding expectations in 2021. Our English language arts scores have steadily increased over the years. Back in 2018, we had 65% of students meeting or exceeding expectations, which ranked us 88th in the state across all elementary schools. And with those 2021 scores, we are now the 11th highest scoring elementary school in the state. So teachers went above and beyond to ensure that students didn't just catch up, but far exceed expectations. Mont Vernon Village School is truly a special place, and you should be proud of the accomplishments of your staff and your students. Thank you for letting me be a part of this special school community.
Thank you, Christine. That's really fantastic to hear that the scores and stuff. This has been a hard year for the teachers, for the kids, for the parents, for everyone, and for us to be excelling like that. That's wonderful. There's a lot of hard work that went into that. Again, the kids, the parents, and the teachers, and the whole administration and staff. Thank you. I thank you. We're going to move on to the first thing is the Article 1, the election of officers. These will be voted on by ballot on March 8th, 2022 to the following district offices: to choose 2 school board members for the ensuing 3 years. You got it up there, good. 1 school district moderator for the ensuing 1 year. To choose 1 school district clerk for the ensuing 1 year. To choose 1 school district treasurer for the ensuing 1 year. So voting for these offices will be at the polls on March 8th, 2022. This is not an article that we debate at this meeting, so that will be placed on the ballot, provided it's moved. And I ask for someone to move it.
Mr. Moderator, I move to place Article 1 on the ballot as written.
Okay, Sarah Lawrence moves. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jessica Hinckley seconds. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Article 2, which is the general budget. I'm going to read the article. I'll ask for it to be moved, and then we'll go into discussion, and the school board will do a presentation. So Article 2, shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, which is tonight, for the purposes set forth herein, totaling $5,873,250. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $5,829,579, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Mont Vernon School District or by law, or by the governing body, or the governing body may hold 1 special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised budget only. There's a majority vote required. This was recommended by the school board 4-0. The estimated tax impact of this article is 78 cents per thousand. The estimated tax impact of not passing this article is 64 cents per thousand. As a note, warrant Article 2, the operating budget does not include any appropriations proposed in any other warrant articles. So I'd like to recognize someone to move the article.
I'll make a motion to move the article for the operating budget.
Okay, the motion is moved By Mr. Eckhoff, and second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Clark. Thank you. I'll recognize Sarah Lawrence to introduce the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Ms. Landerwall, if you can advance our screen to the executive summary. Thank you. So as we progress through the presentation this evening, if anyone was at our public hearing, you're going to notice that the slides are very similar. In fact, probably pretty much the same. We're going to review the executive summary, go through the highlights, and then we'll show you some of the details as we proceed. So our FY23 default is a decrease of 1.1% for a total of $65,172 less than fiscal year 22. The proposed is 0.4% decrease, which amounts to $21,501 less than fiscal year 22. The difference between the default and the proposed is $43,671, and these numbers do exclude any special warrant articles. Thank you. Our major stories, bullet points. The net decrease is really in our special service costs. There's a reduction in our out-of-district special services tuition. We do have increased placement in the Amherst School District Special Services Program, and that does save us a considerable amount. The second point is our investment in our food service program. We do have some modest increases to provide for competitive wages in that program. We've seen the need for some equipment replacement and some additional safety measures. And our third point is the continued investment in our facilities. The next items on the list would be our HVAC duct replacement project scheduled for FY 22-23, and also the long-term capital facilities plan. For those who like charts, a great budget overview that's charted just shows you our little dip there and our decrease. If you look left to right, you'll see the decrease year over year. And moving on to our default calculation, just a reminder that the default budget calculation is legally defined as the calculation identified in RSA 139B, actually. The calculation takes last year's approved budget as a starting point. From there, it removes any one-time expenditures. It takes all contractual obligations into consideration, such as staff and teacher contracts, and then it increases or decreases based on the debt services. So in our default calculation, you'll see the adopted budget at the top, which was $5,944,751. And then as we go down, you would remove the warrant article. We then go ahead and take out tuition, the salaries and contractual wages, our apportionment for the SAU 39 budget, food service, transportation, special ed, and everything else. So you'll see the difference in the subtotal to the changes to the default is a negative 65,172, or that negative 1.1% decrease. In our appropriation comparison, again, you'll take a look at the year over year on the top. So we've got budget on the top line. The difference over to the right is a difference of 21,501 for that 0.4% decrease. The warrant articles are noted, and it just gives you the totals FY 22 to 23. So FY 22, we were $5,944,751. FY 23, $5,923,250 for that difference of 21,501. In the proposed budget calculation, we take the default, which starts at the top, and we add in the things that are needed, deemed necessary. We've got technology at about $31,000, the classroom supplies and materials at about $6,500, facilities at $6,779. Everything else really comes in a little bit less than what we would have had in that bucket last year. The subtotal changes from the default to the proposed is $43,671 for that total of $5,873,250. If you're comparing the budget by fund, the biggest line items, the general fund, you'd see at the top, with that change of 36,092. The food service has that modest increase of 15,576. Again, that's to make our wages competitive, to take care of equipment repairs and some safety, add in additional safety factors. And then we've got grants listed as well with FY22 at about 88,000, slightly less in FY23 at 8715. So the bottom numbers again reflect that change as 21,501 for that 0.4% decrease from FY22 to FY23. In our pie chart, you will see that the largest piece of the pie, the blue section, is our salaries. The tuition to the Amherst School District is that orange piece of the pie on the left. So that's our next largest portion at 23% of the budget. Benefits is the red piece of the pie near the bottom. That's about 17.2%. Contracted services is just over 8% of the budget. Transportation is about 4%. We've got food service at 1.8%, grants at 1.5%. The other bucket is 6.2%, and other tuition is 2.5%. So you'll see the major stories here are really our salaries, tuition to the Amherst School District, salaries and benefits, and the tuition to the Amherst School District. Then comes in the contracted services and transportation. As far as enrollment goes, you will see the trend here. I actually need to make this a little bigger on my screen. So across the bottom, you've got years starting on the far left with fiscal year 13. And over on the right is FY23 projected. Each grade has its own color. So kindergarten starts on the bottom in blue. First grade is red. Second grade is yellow. Third grade is green. Fourth grade is orange. Fifth grade is teal. And grade 6 is purple. Our staffing levels and student to teacher ratio is listed on the next screen. There is really no change here. There is a slight change in the ratio, 15.4 students per teacher in FY22, 15.3 in FY23, just because of a change in the number of students, not a change in the number of staff. The next screen will show you the certified staffing breakdown. Again, there's no change here. There's no major story. Staffing is based on the needs of the students. The special education staff is directly related to the need of students or based on IEPs. In our non-certified staffing, again here, no change listed from FY22 to FY23. So that's really our run through of Article 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. We did move, okay. So at this point, I ask, are there questions of the article? This is the opportunity for folks to come up and make questions. If you do, please make it at the microphone and please state your name and your address. Thank you.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So that a taxpayer like me can.
Excuse me. We
Oh,
need to
sorry.
hear
Eileen Neighbor,
14 Beach Hill Road. Thank you.
For a taxpayer like me, you're giving us what the tax impact is for passing this warrant article. Can you tell me, for comparison purposes, what was it in for this current year, fiscal year 22?
So the question, is what was the tax impact for the current year? So
in other words,
she's looking it up,
looks like the budget went down, so
Correct.
okay, how much are we saving?
Correct.
So later in the presentation, there is information on the revenue and the tax impact. So Sarah, I'm not sure if maybe you want
Yeah,
to
let me see if I
present
can
those
find that
slides?
slide.
Okay.
I think that would answer your question. Going. There you go. Yep.
Slide 30. So in FY22, Eileen, the tax rate was $12.59, and in FY23, it would be $13.36 with the proposed. So it's a difference of 78 cents.
Do we have,
And
the
it's
difference
slide-
is 78
yeah,
cents, but if the budget is going down, wouldn't that be a negative?
So even though the total appropriation for FY23 is down by the 0.4% from FY22, there's less revenue available to offset the tax effort, and that's what's resulting in the increase in the tax rate. Does that make sense? If not, I'm going to ask Amy to jump in there, but
Absolutely. Is this chart in our packet?
Yes.
Thank you. One other question. I noticed the SAU budget has gone up $33,000, and I'm wondering if that increase was just due to salaries or if there's new administrative duties being held there.
Yeah, you can do it.
That is due to a small increase in staffing, the need for additional support in our business office. We are looking to hire a half-time role similar to an administrative assistant, but someone with a strong financial background to support us in the business office.
Just one comment. It would be nice for the amount of money that is spent at the SAU office if they could have someone that answers the phone when you call. I get the dial the number, call the front desk, you get the message repeated, nobody's answering the phone.
Kim Robers, 35 Salisbury Road. So there's been discussion of support staff or supporting the teachers, such as math coaches. We've had this discussion before. It was also discussed at the Sauhegan session. I don't like to. It was also discussed at the Sauhegan session where a board member stated that they didn't believe there was value in that. I have stood here numerous times stating that it was to get our teachers up to specs based on the curriculum that we were using, and we were looking to phase them out. It's a nice thing to have our test scores the way they are, but some of our classes have a 1:15 ratio or a 15.2 ratio based on the things that you use. So as the board, can you address when they'll be phasing out of that, and what is the use still of that and the need basis on that?
Did you understand?
for support staffing, Christine, did you want to field that one?
Yes. So we currently have one full-time math interventionist and one full-time reading specialist. Those interventionists have completely packed schedules supporting students, while our students have made incredible growth, and our classroom teachers are working very hard with every individual student. There are specific needs of students where they might need smaller group instruction and more intensive support to ensure that their needs are being met. And right now, our reading specialist schedule at full-time is full, and our math specialist's schedule is full. We were actually just meeting, Mr. Leckleiter and I were meeting today with our math interventionist to try to find more time in her schedule. So those positions are definitely still needed. I know we presented to the board probably 2.5 years ago on the extraordinary impact those positions have had on our students. And at this time, we, in our budget, propose to continue to keep them at full time. They are working directly with students. While they provide a leadership role and an important role in just kind of that cohesive nature of the content area of presenting to our teachers and supporting them with professional development, they are working directly with students with a full schedule. So we're happy to share with the board at an additional time if needed.
Yes, thank you. And just to address that very point, because I remember you raising that same issue last year. And as a board, we've discussed that very specific topic now 3 times. And I think this year is a great example of the power of those roles, and specifically in the way we're able to support our curriculum structure. And the test results that this community actually received based on the hard work of the staff of this building is a direct reflection of all of that stuff that you, as a former board member, help create the structure for. And I think as a board, it would be irresponsible of us not to continuously reevaluate it, but we're actually seeing the successes today. And as a board member, I don't really see a position where we should actually hit the brakes and pull out of that at this particular point in time. But of course, always looking to see whether or not something is continuously adding value to the overall approach.
So Kim Roberts, 35 Salisbury Road. So then I believe that the staffing levels charts that you have up there is misleading. If those positions are not covered from an IEP standpoint and being covered by any type of funding, then what you're representing for staffing levels is really not a 15-to-3 ratio. If you have 2 more teachers in there that are floating around doing something for the staff or for those students, then that 15-to-3 ratio is a lot lower than that with two teachers. And I think that needs to be represented here.
Do we have any further comments?
And I'm wondering if you're going to cover this, Amy, when you go to the state sources. It does show that there were other state sources under the revenues aspect of it of about $18,000. And now there's none in the last 2 years. Also, the board is addressing, I hope at some point, that last year you had about $350,000 to offset the tax rate, which is why there's a difference there. And is that being put towards something this year, or what was that large earmark of that $350,000 that was given back to the taxpayers? The reason that you stand here this year and be a little bit more concerned, though I applaud this board for having a reduction in it, is that the Sauhegan number on that is extremely high. Mont Vernon's tax rate is the 3rd highest in the state of New Hampshire. And based on this size, we cannot continue to have this. So whether or not there's a reduction there, we need to look at ways to have some sort of cost benefit that when there's a reduction, it's a less of an impact on the taxpayers, because you're getting to the point that people are not going to be able to live here anymore if this continues.
Okay, can I ask Christine that you shift to slide number 29, please? Because I think this will help with that conversation. And Ms. Facey, I may ask you to jump in here as well. So when we're talking about the projected revenue, this chart may help to summarize what we're looking at. We do get revenue from food service. You'll see in FY22 we were at about $91,000 or $92,000. In FY23 the projection is $107,000. So there's a slight increase there. The grant funding absolutely is down slightly, or projected to be down slightly from FY22, from $88,000 to $87,15. The other state aid, there's minimal change, $31 change. The state adequacy aid shifts a little bit. The statewide property tax is actually going down. So the change in the fund balance, you'll see there over on the right, the difference is a negative $289,692. So in FY23, that shift in the less revenue being projected, it's less revenue projected to be available from the unexpended fund balance. And that is what usually is used to reduce or to offset the tax effort. This decrease is largely because the unexpended fund balance in FY22 did include that carryover from FY21. And the FY23 unexpended fund balance only includes what's projected to be available at the end of the year. So you're absolutely right. What you said is true. There was kind of a double up, and that's what you're seeing here. If we go to the projected tax rate on slide 30, again, Eileen, we spoke to this point just a couple minutes ago. Even though the total appropriation is down by 0.4% from FY22, there's less revenue available to offset that tax effort. So that's why there's an increase in the resulting tax rate. In 2020, the state had allowed for school districts to roll over any unassigned fund balances into the next fiscal year. So those funds, along with the unexpended fund balance from FY21, were returned in FY22, and they were used to decrease the tax effort. This meant that the revenue for FY22 included 2 years' worth of unexpended fund balance. In FY23, we are only able to carry forward the unassigned fund balance from FY22. So you'll notice also that we're receiving more revenue in the state adequacy aid, but less in the statewide property tax. So that helps to inform that conversation, so you are seeing that here. Ms. Facey, did you have anything additional to add there for clarification?
No, I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on article number 2? Seeing none, I'll instruct the school district clerk to place article number 2 on the ballot as originally worded in accordance with the statutes. And now we'll move on to article number 3. Article number 3 is for the school property maintenance fund. I'll read it. I'll ask for it to be moved and seconded, and then we'll ask for the school board to do a presentation on it. Article 3, shall the Mont Vernon School District raise and appropriate the sum of up to $50,000 to be added to the school property maintenance expendable trust fund established in March 2007, with such sum to come from the June 30th, 2022 year-end unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st, 2022. No amount shall be raised from new taxation. There's a majority vote required. Now, of course, will be next month when we vote. This was recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 4-0. The estimated tax impact of passing this article is $0 per thousand. The estimated tax impact of not passing this article is negative 16 cents per thousand. I'd like to recognize someone to move this article.
I'll make a motion to move the article number 3, property maintenance expendable trust fund.
Thank you, Mr. Eckhoff moved the article. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Hinckley seconds. Thank you. I'll ask the board to give a presentation on article number 3 now.
Thank you. Can we move to slide number 24, please? So this is a conversation that we've had for several years now. We're looking at our long-term facilities plan. Essentially, this plan was put in place to help to ease the burden of large projects on a small town. So by funding this expendable trust with $50,000 every year, it gives us the ability to project and to manage these larger costs for the building's maintenance. We did complete a pretty significant project this past year. We completed the roof project. So that was $207,000 completed in FY22. I think the community deserves a large congratulatory effort there for funding that project, and our facilities and administrative team for bringing that to fruition. The next thing on the docket is our HVAC duct replacement. It's about a $247,000 project that's slated to happen in several phases in FY22 and FY23. We will talk a little bit more about that in depth on the next slide. Playground equipment would be slated to be either refreshed or replaced in FY28. The projected cost for that at about $100,000. And a fire alarm system a few years further out, FY31, if you can believe we're saying that, at about $140,000 in FY31. So if we move on to the next slide, slide 25, we can dig in a little bit more deeply to the HVAC duct replacement project. Again, targeted for FY22 and 23. There are 2 phases, but essentially 2 steps in phase 1 and 1 in phase 2. In phase 1, the funding sources would come from the ESSER 3 funds, $55,000. And what is the ETF fund? Refresh my memory, Amy.
Expendable Trust Fund.
The expendable trust, sorry. Oh man, it's not my night. Thanks. So So essentially, we would be pulling from two sources of funding there, 55,000 from the ESSER 3 and 95 from the expendable trust. And again, that targeted replacement would happen over 2 years. In FY23, we would pull another 97,000 from the expendable trust to complete the project for a total cost of $247,000. If we move on to slide 26, you'll see a further breakdown of that long-term facilities funding plan. Again, it's all of those projects that I just outlined, showing the $50,000 contribution year over year, how it adds up, what withdrawals we would be expecting in what years, the balances in the far right column. Again, there's no major story other than the ones that I laid out a little bit earlier on the previous slide. The $50,000 annual contribution really does work to help to try and keep the tax rate as steady as possible. And again, no changes in funding recommended, except pending the middle school study committee review. So we will be having that discussion after this meeting to start to open up that dialogue, but at this time, no changes recommended. On slide 27, it is worth noting that in FY23, there were items for board consideration that were not included in the proposed budget. This did include some furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and some technology. It was discussed at the board level that these things could be delayed, again, to try and keep the budget as flat as possible, because we are trying to be really cognizant of the impact on taxpayers, while also being able to provide the necessary equipment here for the students and staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Christine, if you could go back, I think it was 2 slides of the one with the 2 sources of funding. I just wanted to explain. So I wasn't sure what the alphabet soup, the ARP ESSER 3 is. The way I've heard of it, it's COVID funds. It's funds that the federal government has made available to improve air quality in schools and things like that. So that's a one-time fix or one-time fund that we got from federal government. The ETF, that's the fund, the expendable trust fund that we're looking at right here. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear with that. I also had a comment for the board. I noticed that in both articles, they were voted on, recommended by the Mont Vernon School Board 4-0, and there are 5 school board members. Could we have an explanation for why it's 4-0, not 5-0, whatever?
Yes, we do. At the meeting where we voted on the articles, Mr. Eckhoff was traveling and was not present. Mr. Eckhoff, did you want to just give your vote?
Yeah, I was out of town, but I fully support the efforts of the Budget Committee and the budget as presented. So that's why I was not there. Yay.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Of course we do.
Of course. Eileen Neighbor. Go back to the projected revenue slide, if you can.
Slide 29.
Okay. For fiscal year 23, you're giving us an estimated fund balance of $68,000 to offset fiscal year 23's costs. Is the $50,000 for your reserve fund included in that 68, or have you already deducted it?
Amy, can you answer that for clarity?
Yep. Yes, it is included in that.
So if they put the 50,000 at the end of this school year, if those numbers stay the same, and they put that 50,000 into the capital reserve, that number becomes 18,000.
That's correct.
And that means, so then your tax rate is going to go up.
The tax rate, if it is not spended. So the tax rate goes down if it's not used. It stays flat if it's used.
But that fund balance is based on what's spent in fiscal year 22, correct?
Yes. But if you look at the projected tax impact slide,
No, just the estimated fund balance is what's left over from fiscal year 22
right?
at the end of the school year, which because we voted for the 50 last year, that number now becomes 18. Because the 50 is spent from your estimated, from your fund balance.
Right.
So saying that it has no tax impact is incorrect because if that becomes 18, that's going to raise the increase in taxes for fiscal year 23.
It only becomes 18, Eileen, it's Sarah talking over this way. It only becomes 18 if that Article 3 passes this year. Last year's was funded from last year's unexpended fund balance, so that's already passed.
So 22 was paid from 20.
I know, but what Amy's saying is the projected tax impact is done without any of the offsetting costs. So that if in fact the 68 was to use to be offset, this would be reduced, but it's not going up if the 68 isn't here. This isn't brought into the tax impact when she does it.
Correct.
I'm 1 year off.
Yeah.
So in essence, it has no tax impact because we've already put that money aside.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's in our savings account,
Yes.
if you will.
Yes, so if Article 3 is not passed this year, it has no impact. If it is passed, if it is not passed this year, it helps to offset the tax rate. If it is passed, it does not, basically. That makes more sense? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right.
I like the thumbs up. Thanks.
Okay. Any further comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll instruct the school district clerk to place warrant Article 3 on the ballot as originally worded in accordance with state statutes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I forgot to do that. So there's been a motion to restrict reconsideration. Is there a second to that motion? I'm sorry, with Mr. O'Keefe. Is there a second to that motion?
Kim Roberg seconds.
Did you
Yeah.
second it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, now we're going to vote on the motion to restrict reconsideration. What this means is we cannot go back at another time in this meeting and revisit Articles 1, 2, or 3, or actually Articles 2 or 3. So all in favor of approving a motion to restrict reconsideration, please raise your card. Anyone opposed? The motion passes.
I just had another question. Can I?
Okay.
So Kim Roberts, 35 Salisbury Road. I forgot to ask the board, and I know I have been following this, but I didn't get to ask. Part of those coaches that you have there, it has always been, and our test scores, like you said, Mr. O'Keefe, are certainly showing that. Is there also that we're doing something for the overachievers as well, and for the honors, or that aspect of it, and that they're being involved in that as well?
Yes, we've actually been working closely with our math interventionist and reading specialists this year to do both school-wide activities to generate interest and excitement both in math and in literacy. And we have a number of school-wide events that we've been doing. Plus those teachers work either directly with classroom teachers to support enrichment or pull students for enrichment groups. That's a little bit more flexible than their routine intervention groups, but we are working with both of the teachers on enrichment.
Okay. I guess at this point, that's a close to the discussion on articles. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? I have an announcement or two to make. One is You probably noticed that there was no budget committee this year. It's the moderator's job to seat a budget committee, and I tried, and I, at best, came up with one person that was willing to do it. At one point, I had 4 or 5, but they all had previous commitments and couldn't do it. And so I'm looking for help for recruiting next year's budget committee. It's a very important function. The way it works now, it's been very streamlined with the SAU for the past few years, where it basically starts in September, and the SAU will dictate or offer a series of meetings. So you're basically meeting from September through December when you vote on the articles of the budget. So I'm hoping next year we'll be a little more successful, or a lot more successful, in getting a budget committee. I guess with that, I thank everyone for coming tonight. I hope I see you at the polls on March 8th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The polls will be open to vote on these. I'll give one more time. Is there any other business to come before this meeting? I'll make another announcement that immediately following this, we'll take a quick recess, and then the school board has asked to meet with the middle school study committee that delivered a report about a month or so ago. Of course, everyone is welcome to attend for the remainder of that. And with that, I'd like to announce that the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Because this is a discussion with the middle school study committee, I do invite the committee members to snuggle up a little bit, you know, as much as you feel comfortable. I know we're in some restrictions here, but we really are looking to have a good discussion. So we're happy to have you here. So nice to see you.
I have snacks if you get close enough.
I'm not sharing my snacks. Offer your own snacks, Pete.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it to say again that that we're so. I'm surprised. I mean, we have got these beautiful baskets from the teachers and staff that gave us these baskets for this evening, and it's nice to feel collegial and the love from our staff. So thank you for that. What do you need, Howard? There is candy. Do you want a piece? Come. I'll share with you.
Low blood sugar, quick.
I'll share with you. Come on over.
Woohoo!
What do you need, Kim? Yeah. Kim, I'm going to have you say that again in a moment, but first I want to reconvene this meeting of the Mont Vernon Village School Board. It is 8:09 and we are back in session. And I'm just going to give Ms. Roberge a moment to clarify with Mr. O'Keefe, and then we'll answer that question. And just for clarity, for anyone who's joining the second half of this meeting, we are at the point in our agenda where we are entertaining the presentation from the middle school study committee, their findings, their report findings. So we're going to be reviewing that and having a discussion with the committee on that report. And we're just waiting for clarification. Ms. Roberge had a question for the board. So in a moment, we'll have Mr. O'Keefe address that question. I can't hear you, Howard, with the background noise. I'm sorry. the question that Mr. Roberge had, I didn't hear her either, which is why Mr. O'Keefe is over there trying to get clarity on the question. So we'll repeat it in just a moment.
And I know no one on Zoom can hear unless we're using microphones. So the public, I know we're kind of in a small group, but the public should use their microphone too if they are speaking.
And we can share these microphones with committee members as well. So we'll make sure that we mic up. I think we're waiting for just a minute. Come, use the mic so that people on Zoom can hear you. I know you don't like to, but we need you to.
Kim Roberts, 35 Salisbury Road. So my question was in regards of reopening the contract or an opt-out of the contract. I think the concern that you're hearing all over, even in Amherst, is what if Mont Vernon leaves and the burden of that. And so if Mr. O'Keefe, you could clarify the ins and outs of that, and then I will let you have your discussion with your committee. I apologize.
Great question. And first of all, thank you for raising that. And I remember last year very clearly you having a similar concern. The tuition agreement is written today and signed by this board actually last calendar year now, commits this community to a 5-year commitment. And that commitment has an exit or an off-ramp option with notice. And so hypothetically, if this community came forward and said, hey, we're ready, we want to open up our own middle school program, we're out, this board can then notify the Amherst School District of our plan to exit out of the contract. There are obligations and requirements as part of the contract for us to go ahead and continue our capital costs. And at the end, or I believe it's year number 3, and Amy, you have to help me, or one of you guys if you have it in front of you, but year number 3 could be the notice to exit out, and then we're clear. There are no additional capital costs after our exit. It's only up until the exit in which we're obligated. At this point, the 5-year contract will come back to this community, and if this community embraces the middle school concept and continues to engage the town of Amherst with its middle school students, this board, as a result of the last agreement, can go back, not reopen any discussion if it chooses to do so, or the community chooses to do so, comes back to the taxpayer to say, we reauthorize an additional 5 years. And then from there, the tuition agreement needs to be rewritten at year number 10. So we can open up at any time in year number 5 to renegotiate and say, hey, we're not happy with the current status quo. We want to rethink this approach and reapproach the tuition agreement discussion at that point.
So just one more question, if you would allow me.
Please.
So except for the exit clause and giving a 3-year time frame, whatever is done in Amherst, Mont Vernon now is locked in as to what the capital improvements state in our contract for the next 4 years.
Unless we ask them to renegotiate sooner.
And very quickly, a long time ago, the town of Amherst, the school board of Amherst, did not come to Mont Vernon with the appropriate plans for what they were supposed to do. There was language in the contract that stated that you had to inform us based on, given the time frame in order to do that. And a board member at that time, Mr. O'Brien, sat on the school board and tried to convince the town of Mont Vernon to not pay for those capital expenses, that we were not liable for them based on lack of notification and such as that. I just would like, whether it's an attorney to look at this, the concern that it seems that the taxpayers in the town of Mont Vernon are starting to have is, what is our option if Amherst passes this? I mean, you as the board are going to discuss, the ins and outs of the pluses and the minuses, but I'm wondering if there's anything else besides the out clause that we have to totally leave the Amherst Middle School and tuitioning our children there to remove ourselves from that, or to open it up for a renegotiation based on the capital expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. We can always visit legal counsel in non-public session to have that dialogue in an environment where we can pose and receive proper legal guidance and advice.
And just for clarification, the prior tuition contract with Amherst was a 10-year agreement. So the change that we negotiated in this last one was to offer the flexibility at year 5 because we were aware of this potential project. So that's the reason for the shift. It had been a 10-year agreement. We shifted to 5 with an option to extend for 5. Okay, thank you.
During our session, we reviewed this. Oh,
Get
sorry.
much closer to the
Andrew
mic.
Stokinger, 21 Grand Hill Road. During the session, we reviewed the contract. And in the contract, they also have the option to kick us out. So to be very clear, we could get kicked out as well with 2 years' notice.
Thank you for the clarification.
Howard Brown, Blood Road. Point of correction on that 3 years, I believe it's two full years. So like if we started this today, you'd have the rest of this year plus 2 more full years, not 3 years total.
I believe that's
2 years.
correct.
I do have the date from the contract if that's helpful. It's by October 1st, 2025, the Mont Vernon School Board would need to give notice to the chair of the Amherst School Board as to whether or not Mont Vernon wishes to extend the agreement.
Thank you. So Mr. King, can you just explain your role in the process with the Middle School Study Committee for people who are joining us on Zoom?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So it's towards the end of last year, the school board put together a study committee for the purpose of looking at what our options are for middle school. Just to repeat, and for the folks on Zoom, our children right now, they go to the village school for kindergarten through 6th grade. The Mont Vernon children also go to the Sauhegan Cooperative School, which is co-owned by Amherst and Mont Vernon for the high school years. That's grades 9 through 12. We currently don't have a school for our 7th and 8th graders. We do it through a tuition agreement, and those children are under the responsibility of this board, the Mont Vernon School Board, which school district board. You have not only the village school, but also the 7th and 8th graders that are under your purview. For many years, they have been tuitioned to the Amherst Middle School under a tuition agreement. The tuition agreement has been revised typically every 10 years, and this is a 5-year renewal that we did. The agreement basically calls for the payment of basically a daily rate for what it costs to educate a student in the Amherst School District. There's also part of the formula that allows Amherst to charge Mont Vernon for some of the capital improvements of the buildings. Part of that, there's a formula for existing previous capital improvements, but there's also a clause in there that we would be liable for a portion of future building, construction, capital improvements, and what have you. So the board charged this panel with 3 questions. I'm going to find my questions here. So 3 questions. Do we continue the tuition agreement and absorb the additional capital costs? Number 2, do we bring the 7th and 8th grade students back, take the capital costs that would have gone to Amherst and do something to this building, the Mont Vernon Village School, and educate our kids K through 8? And is there, number 3 was, is there anything else being considered? So the committee was myself, Peter King as chairperson, Dagmar Vlahos as the vice chair. If you'll just raise your hand so the folks in the room can recognize you. Autumn Gardenia was our secretary. Ann Dodd. Andrew Stokinger. Howard Brown was the select board representative. And Charlene Brown was the teacher's representative. I think they were non-voting positions, but we treated you as if you were us, because we really didn't vote. We worked as a committee, and it was very good. I'll also mention two of our committee members who were, everyone on this committee was great, but we had Jennifer Henneberry and Craig Wiley were also on the committee. We met 7 times, I think, and it was really a wonderful process. I enjoyed it. And I thank Dagmar for co-chairing and for filling in when I couldn't be there. But we spent a lot of time defining what the conditions were. My experience as an engineer is you put 10 engineers in a room and they're all going to solve the problem, but they're all going to solve a different problem. And that's what I was concerned about. And the minute I got on the phone with Dagmar to talk about what my concerns were, we were talking the same language. And I got off the phone and my wife said, "Were you talking to yourself?" So it was really great to work with her and the whole committee. But basically, your expertise, Dagmar, is a lean instructor. So this is what you do. So we had the right person to help our group basically stay on track and define what the conditions were. We defined who our stakeholders were, and that became very important as we went on. Who are we doing this for, and who will it impact? So we had stakeholders and customers. Okay, the customers were obviously the children, but there are other customers, and the stakeholders is basically everyone else that has anything to do with it, from parents to teachers to administrators to whatever. So, and the taxpayers, of course. So, so we looked at the tuition agreement. I think we've talked about that a little bit, and obviously, the Mont Vernon would be responsible for a portion of a building, and Amherst, they are considering a sizable building project, an $83 million building project, of which about $50 million is elementary school and $30 million is renovations to the middle school. We would only be responsible for that portion of the 30-something million that was for the middle school. One of the things we tried to get a handle on was what would it cost Mont Vernon if their article passes? And there were a lot of assumptions that went into this. One assumption was, we're going to continue with the same number of kids we have. They're going to continue with the same number of kids they have. I think it's foolish to try to do 30-year projections on a school. This school has gone up and down, and I think you can do a pretty good projection 2 and 3 years out, but you can't do it 5 years out. It really has to do with real estate and the economy and everything else as far as what's going on. Ian? So another proposal that the Amherst has made is to move the 5th grade from the middle school to the elementary school. So what that does, because our cost to the school is based on the proportion of our kids in the school compared to the total kids in the school will drop just because some of their kids will go to their elementary school. So our proportion goes higher. I think, did we come up, it was like 10% to 13? Yeah, 11%. So we would pay, under today's formula, 11% of the cost, of the capital cost, and it would go up to 13% as that change takes place over a couple of years into the contract. In our report, we have a table that was provided by the SAU. The first year is basically a half-year payment. Mont Vernon would pay $75,000 towards capital improvement, and after that, it would go up to around $200,000, $200,000 to $220,000, and then eventually taper back down. But at lowest, it would go down to $128,000. So it's a significant investment. This is on top of the cost that we already pay for tuition to send the kids down there. So we looked at the alternatives. Alternative one the kids stay at AMS. And the report identifies pros and cons. And we didn't try to make this a report where you can check off one and say, well, here's your recommendation, because it's really not the committee's job to make a recommendation. The committee is to provide facts and information. With every option, there are pros, and every option, there are cons. I'd just say that obviously the biggest pro to keeping the kids in the Amherst Middle School is consistency. They're going to go to the same, they're going to be in the same peer group for the 7th and 8th grade as they would be in high school. So there would be no change for them. They would have sports and extracurricular opportunities. There's social growth. I know as a parent myself, and I would see this, that typically a 6th grade parent is so ready to put their kids on the bus to go down the hill and meet some new kids. But I know kindergarten parents, and I was a kindergarten parent at one point too, I just want to keep my babies in Mont Vernon forever and never have them go down the hill. So, but they do need to grow, and I think just about everyone, when the kids get to that age, they need to find a bigger peer group. So the cons, I'm not going to read all of these, but it's very unpredictable, and there's quite a bit of risk, I think, if we decide to bring our kids and build a school or equip a school or something like that. There's a lot of concern about that. We did identify a couple of concerns we had, and initially, and this may have changed, but initially the project was going to build the elementary school in Amherst first, and then in year 4 and 5 they were going to build additions to the middle school. But because of the way it was bonded, it appeared to us that we would be paying building costs in year 1 before, 3 years before they even did any work on the middle school. So I think that was sort of one of the thoughts we had, is if it gets passed, or if it gets passed in the future, that they consider separating the middle school from the elementary school bond, because I think it just would be very messy to even try to understand how the costs are going to one school versus the other, because obviously Mont Vernon is liable for costs incurred at the middle school, but not the elementary. And if you've got a project manager working on 2 projects, it gets very, very confusing if they're basically dipping from the same pot. So the next study we looked at was what would it take to make a 7th and 8th grade. And I thank Christine for helping us on this. Her expertise, she was very valuable in the committee, and Charlene, you were as well as a teacher in the school here. But one of the things we learned is we couldn't really build a middle school because there's a lot of requirements that pertain to middle school. However, we could still have a K through 8 elementary, or a K through 8 school, I'll call it. It wouldn't be an elementary per se, but it would not be classified as middle school. There were some requirements that we would have to have teachers with a more advanced teaching certificate, which we may or may not have in the school. I think we have a few of them, but whether or not they would want to teach the upper grades, it's, I don't know if that's our choice or not. So we looked at how many teachers in general we would have to hire. I know we looked at this probably 15 years ago when I was in town. We did a very similar exercise, and there was a thought in town, well, all you need to do is hire 2 or 3 teachers and you've got a middle school, or 4 teachers. And we learned it's a lot more than that, with the staffing, the special needs, and just extracurricular programs. You've got to offer something beyond the 4 basic courses that we offer our 6th graders for the 7th and 8th. We looked very briefly at the property that the school owns, and the question was, could we even build onto this property? My opinion, and I'm a civil engineer, is there's not a property in the world that you can't build on. It's just a matter of how much it's going to cost to do it. So I'm sure if we were to build an addition of 4 rooms, I'm sure we could fit it somewhere. But we decided that's not a question we were going to try to tackle. That's a question for an engineer in the future. We also noted that the Mont Vernon School District does own the McCullum Field. John's not here. Okay, so John, someone had told me that it was not true, but Eileen Neighbor, of course, pointed me in the direction of the deed, and I got a copy of the deed, which the McCullum Institute donated the land to the Mont Vernon Village School District. So that field does belong to the school. There's also an additional parcel, 5 acres down in the woods there. But so we didn't spend too much time on the building, the building itself. Pros and cons. The pros, you avoid the tuition costs and the Amherst bond. We could build our own curriculum, and local control was something we felt that was really a plus here. It's something I feel that we don't have with the middle school. It's unfortunate that, I think it's unfortunate that Mont Vernon was not invited to participate in discussions regarding what should be done with the middle school. One of the biggest cons of our own was we'd lose the middle school activities. And we looked at one point, could we just send our kids down to Amherst to play on their sports teams? And the answer to that is no. And it's because of the school athletic commission or whatever it is. They don't allow kids from another school to go to a second school. They would absolutely prohibit that. So it's not an option that we could educate our kids here for a couple of years for 7th and 8th grade and then put them on a bus and to go to sports programs in Amherst. That's not an option. And it would be tough to field a sports team other than track or something like that for a small, I mean, we're looking at 30 kids in each grade, 60 kids. We also looked at some other, I'd call them sub-ideas, and one was, do we need to even build a school or school buildings, or could we lease space? One example is what charter schools do. I don't think there's a charter school in the state that has built a building. They lease space. There is plenty, I'm sure there is plenty of commercial real estate that's available, both offices and retail space that could be equipped for it. And one thought that came up was, would it even be possible to rent space from the Sauhegan School District, where the annex was built several years, or more than several, was built to accommodate at least 300 more kids than are in the school right now. So that was just, and I think a lot of what we do, we just kind of threw these ideas out there. They're not, they may fly, they may not fly, but so the benefit of the Sauhegan thing is, of course, we'd be paying back ourselves in a way that we co-own that building, so a portion of that rent would come to Mont Vernon, and a portion of it would go to Amherst. So we looked at other considerations, and one was send the kids to another middle school. Do we send them to New Boston or Milford or Goffstown or Wilton Lineborough? And I think there's obviously the biggest con of that is, of course, you're going to send, the kids are going to be together for 6 or 7 years at the village school. You're going to send them somewhere for 2 years, and then they're going to have a whole new peer group for their high school year. And that is just would be a very difficult thing, I think. The idea came up, tuition Mont Vernon students to their choice of public or private schools. And I don't even know if this is possible or feasible or whatever. But the thought was, we currently, or with the tuition and the capital costs that we would be paying AMS, Amherst Middle School, would be paying $26,000 per student per year. I don't know if it's possible that we could offer a stipend to send a child to another school of their choice for less than $26,000. I know of one school district, and I don't know much about the details, but Warren, New Hampshire is in a very similar situation to Mont Vernon. They have about 20 kids in the 7th grade and 20 kids in the 8th grade. They educate their kids in a K through 8 building. The middle school has 4 teachers, just 4 teachers. It has English, you gotta help me on this, English, math, social studies, and science, I guess. I know a woman, a Sauhegan graduate who taught there for 5 years. They have no extracurricular activities. The dances are awkward, was one of the things she told me, because it's the same 20 kids who've been together forever and ever and ever. And I think the educational experience in a situation like that is limited. I would hope if we were to do something, we would provide more than just 4 teachers to run basically a middle school program. But one of the things, though, that Warren does, they also do not have a high school. So they offer their parents of the students a choice of 4 high schools to go to. There's one in New Hampshire, there's one across the border in Vermont. I think one is Plymouth, one is in Vermont, and then 2 private high schools. They will pay the lesser of the amount of a public school, and the parents provide the difference. So if you wanted to send your child to a private school, you get the base amount that it would cost for public school, and then they would pay, the parent would pay the balance. So that's where we don't know if that would work, but it's just a thought we had. It was suggested to our committee, or someone on the committee said $26,500 per year would cover a lot of private schools. I don't know if that's true, but I think I'm going to stop right here and see if my committee members think I missed anything before we go to next steps. Andrew, you want to come up and speak?
Andrew Stokinger. Okay. So one of the things we called out was the fact I mentioned earlier is that Amherst could decide to end the contract on us, and we would have no choice. So with the fact that their grade school is filling up, their middle school is filling up, they might decide that they won't take our money basically, and they'll tuition their own students. So one of the things we discussed was, well, what happens if we can't send our students to Amherst in 5 more years from now? And that was one of the other pros to making a decision now, even if we didn't act now.
Good point.
That if we know what we're going to do whenever they cut us off, we can broadcast to them, we can have an open conversation, but we will never be surprised because we'll be ready for it. Right?
Definitely a good point. Thank you. Kind of the flip of what we're talking about, but it's always good to round out the conversation.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the thoughts when I got on this committee, or when I asked to chair the committee, was I wanted to get this basically to a close this time of year before folks are going to ballots to vote. I don't want to have Amherst be surprised by what we're talking about. I wanted to make sure this is a clear and open communication, as I think it needs to be going forward. We can't go in our corner and they can't go in their corner and figure out what we're doing next. It's always been work together, and that's what it'll continue to be. But I wanted to make sure that this committee delivered a report on what the options were to the board. I think your question to me in an email was, what is the next step? It's clearly explained on a flow chart in here. And I wish Craig was here to explain it, but, and I only printed half of it, so I'm not gonna, so, so I think in general, we can talk about what is the next step. Obviously, this committee is done. As far as I'm concerned, this committee is done. I think the school board should consider forming another committee to take this the next step. It may be prudent to wait until March 8th to find out how votes go, but whether Amherst School passes or not, it's not going to go away. It'll be there next year. And I think it would put us in a much better position if we are talking with them for the next year if it doesn't pass, so that when it gets to vote, I mean, essentially our kids go to their school, we want to have the quality education that their parents want. We want to be part of that. But at the same time, we do face some tax challenges in Mont Vernon. We don't have the benefit of every time you go to shop at Walmart, you know, your tax dollars is going to the school. We don't have employers in Mont Vernon that are helping fund the schools. So I think the other day, the Sauhegan rate, the increase was 51 cents for Amherst and $1.50 or something like that for Mont Vernon. And I think it's a similar situation with the middle school, so that if it hurts them, it's going to hurt us 2 or 3 times as much. So, so I think that's my recommendation: is the board, you know, consider this report and maybe come up with some comments. And as you did this time, there were 3 excellent questions. Come up with some questions, and I would recommend wait till after March and figure out what the next step is and empower a new committee. I loved being on this committee because it was finite. It had a beginning, it had an end, and I would not support a committee where you say you want to spend 2 years looking at something. So you can do it in 10 committees of 4 months apiece. I'm good with that. But so I guess that's all I have. I certainly, if any of the other committee members want to chime in, Ian.
My name is Ann Dodd. I live at 36 Mason Road in Mont Vernon. And my career was building schools, basically. I built them in one role or another, 1 million square feet of public schools. And so I was very interested in the JFAC meetings, and I attended several of them in person. They were poorly attended in Amherst. There were 2 or 3 people there that were not involved with the committee. There were a lot of questions that were not asked. And my biggest concern for you to talk with your cohort in Amherst is, how are they going to accomplish $83 million worth of construction in 2 years? When I asked about the middle school project, which is really what I was worried about, they said they're going to do it in 2 summers. So they don't have to have any facilities for the children outside the school. And I think that that's unrealistic. I think that I would be very surprised if you can do $30 million worth of construction in 4 months. The other thing that was never asked was, what are they going to do with the elementary school kids while they tear down their building? Apparently, there was more interest in the traffic study than there was in what was going to happen with the students. But that's neither here nor there. But I think that the project wasn't well documented, the schedule wasn't well documented, and I have some very big concerns about them spending extra money at the elementary school and shorting, it's all one bond, so they would short the middle school project, but we would still be on the hook for our portion of that money. It's just some food for thought.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. King, for your summary. We appreciate that. Really quickly, Ms. Hinckley has a piece of information to add from a colleague in Amherst for clarity.
So just a point of clarity on the report, I did receive some information from one of the chairs of JVAC that the plan currently is for the projects AMS and the elementary school projects to run concurrently, so they wouldn't be running at different times. They'd be both being done at the same time. They could still short it, the project, but.
That did come out after our report.
Okay.
Because Ann and I have attended the JPAC meetings in person or on Zoom. So they did make a change.
Thank you. Mr. O'Keefe, would you like to start us off here in the
Oh, yes.
conversation?
Thank you very much, guys. I met with you all the first night, so obviously your efforts are definitely recognized, appreciated. And I think the important thing that came out of this is starting a conversation with the community to recognize that there are rather sizable choices that we as a community are going to need to make one way or the other that are going to impact the educational services that we provide kids down the road, right? And so first of all, thank you for that. What I would like to ask, if it's okay with you, if we could just go around, start off with Mr. Brown, just talk a little bit about what surprised you or what you noticed out of this process as a community member, as a committee member, that you basically sat back and said, wow, I'm kind of surprised by that, something to think about. And the reason why I asked that question is because if you're thinking about that, odds are someone else in the community would be surprised by the same comment.
Yeah. I wasn't really surprised by a lot of the stuff on the committee. Those are questions that we've had. I was on the Mount Vernon School Board for 3 years. And while I was on that board, we talked about building a new school. We looked at land. We formed a committee. So those questions were always there. And then when I went to the Sahegan School Board, some of those same questions on how to build a better school. So those were always in the back of my mind. I think a lot of the things we talked about on this committee was things we didn't like and how we could change things. Everybody, they don't like the tax burden that we have in Mount Vernon. And one of the things we looked at was how do we get away from that tax burden? I listened to the deliberative from Amherst last night, and it seems like they had the same questions. So nothing surprises me there. There's anger there as there is anger here. So it's the same old.
Would you like to go, Ann, or do you feel you covered that already? Okay. Mrs. Brown. Or I can give you this.
Oh, okay. So I really didn't have any surprises from my standpoint, and I did have a wonder just because this personally almost impacted our family until we moved to this beautiful town, so it became a moot point. But many schools have people tuitioned in, not large groups, but right, many schools. If I wanted to, for instance, when I lived in my prior town, Pembroke, I started teaching here. If I wanted to bring my children here, there is a fixed cost of tuition. Would I then also have added cost of cap costs in addition? When a student tuitions into our school, because as I understand it, we have some, do we then extend those costs as well? And so I will say that did surprise me a little bit, having no equity in the building.
This being my first time on a committee, I was actually surprised. Oh, I'm sorry, Dagmar Vallejo, 17 Spring Hill Road. Being on this committee was an eye-opener for me. I've lived in this town for 15, 16 years, and this is the first time that I've been involved in something like this. So I want to thank all of you for allowing me to be able to do that. I found out a lot of things that I didn't know about and that I didn't realize as a taxpayer. And for me, a few things that came to light were that Mount Vernon did not have a voice in the construction ideas for the middle school. I feel as though we don't have a voice in that middle school. We're expected to pay for that, but we weren't consulted, and that there was no information that came from that perspective. So I think that was my biggest eye opener, was the feeling of, we're sending our kids into this school. My son went, he went, K through 12, Mount Vernon, the middle school and the high school. And I'm just a little disappointed that, the middle school, and we're tuitioning in, that we really don't have the voice that we should have for our children as they're going through that 7th and 8th grade experience. So those were my biggest things. I do want to say this was a great committee to work with. And I was happy to share my facilitation skills with the group, and we were able to get down to some really great things through that project. So Andrew, I'm going to.
Andrew Stokinger. What really surprised me when I joined this committee and when I was finding out all the information about what we do was how much money we pay per student per year. Just seemed ridiculous to me. I went to a K through 8 grade school as well, with one class in each grade that was private. My parents paid for it. The current tuition for that school is $4,475 a year. It's the same school my mother and my grandmother went to, so a little bit of history. But at the time I went, it was $1,600 a year. So the fact we're paying more than 5 times that just seems ridiculous to me.
Autumn Gardina, 4 Pinkham Avenue. I was surprised after speaking with Christine to find out the vast amount of requirements that it would take to make an actual middle school. I think when we talk about like keeping our kids here, it seems like Peter said, like, oh, let's just hire 4 more teachers. But I think we would be doing our kids a disgrace to keep them here as a K through 8, knowing what they wouldn't get and what we couldn't provide, just simply because we couldn't. We couldn't have extracurriculars. We couldn't give them the choices in electives that they have now. After that meeting, it was sad for me, honestly, as a mother of young kids, to think those kids would miss out on so much if they stayed here. Now, if that's the experience you're looking for something smaller and not to have all of those things, maybe that would work for some people. But personally, for my family, and knowing, my oldest just went to middle school, she needed that. She needed it before she got it. And, all kids are different, but my son is in the 6th grade. He's done. He doesn't want to be here anymore. I mean, he loves Mont Vernon, and he loves, the family that is Mont Vernon, but he needs more. And I don't, it was shocking to me, I guess, what it would take to actually provide that type of experience for our kids.
Thank you. I've got one more question before I turn it over to everyone else, because everyone knows I'm the one that talks way too much. Have we looked, or did you guys look at sort of the total costs of doing an in-house program? Were they comparative to what we're currently paying right now in tuition, or did we not even approach that subject? I.e. the cost of adding in extracurricular stuff, using private sector support for that, everything along those items.
No, we really didn't get into that. We got as far as the staff and faculty that we would need, the administrative support, but we didn't try to quantify a cost for that.
Mr. O'Keefe, I think when we last had that conversation and we did some rough math, it was just under $1 million. And I did do a quick comparison, and it does look like there are some additional hours needed from some of the specialists. So I think it would probably come in at just over $1 million. I'm guesstimating, but I think it would be around that mark for staffing at least.
And I know I did that staffing sheet. I don't have it in front of me. What was the total additional? FTE recommendations. I should have had that open. I apologize.
You've got to, yeah, it doesn't break down the bottom. Can you go by one?
Yes, that's correct. About $1 million.
So that's 8.4 additional FTEs, including the guidance. Well, there's no increase to guidance. I'm sorry. School psychologist, OT, health. Yes, sorry. But including all that stuff. Okay. And one more time, Pete, for the numbers. And when you guys examine sort of the added FTEs to the overall approach, that would also obviously contribute to an enhanced experience for our younger grades where they don't necessarily have access to the Spanish piece in the same degree. We'd have more consistency from a music or an art program because we'd be able to subsidize or keep that person longer than 6 months or 12 months. The gym teacher, so like that piece, that qualitative piece, by having these added full-time people could actually be a benefit, correct?
That's true. That was one of the benefits we found. The village school has a very difficult time retaining part-time specialists. And if you could make that part-time gym teacher a full-time gym teacher, or that part-time Spanish teacher a full-time Spanish teacher, that would be a benefit. So in that 8.4, it's not necessarily 8.4 new people, it's adding to some of the existing staff. So that would make staff retention possibly easier to attract and retain staff, I would think. But on the same time, it may be more difficult if you've got a Spanish teacher that's got to teach K through 8. I have no idea how that works. So it's its own challenge.
And last question, Amy, and I'm going to catch you off guard. What was our current October 1st enrollment for the middle school? And what is the expected bill? I know we literally just went through this an hour ago.
I have it too. I'm looking.
So where they're looking, we just use 30 children per grade across the board. Again, because things will go up and down a little bit, but.
Yeah, currently at AMS, we have 33 seventh graders and 28 eighth graders. So 61.
And then our tuition costs without reductions based on the reverse tuition agreement?
So sorry, we couldn't hear you. What did you say?
Our current tuition bill for this.
But what's the current tuition bill?
Not including reductions.
And I think that's 2 years off for the DOE.
Well, so you want to know what FY22 tuition?
Yeah, you're asking for the FY22 tuition.
Yeah, the current one that we're right now.
Right, paying.
Based on October 1st.
Yeah.
Guys, what I'm contemplating in my mind is to address Autumn's sort of concern about extracurricular and stuff like that. If we, right now, just using the hypothetical of adding the full-time equivalents, are able to cover that with extra or excess capacity with regards to our current year's tuition payment, that could create some additional options to hire or contract or get some extracurricular programs started here that are sustainable instead of volunteer led, which is awesome, but typically that's not sustainable over multiple years. We've got great programs, but they typically dissipate as parents matriculate out of the building with their students. So.
Amy has to go in and double check. We have what we budgeted for quickly on our hands, but not what is currently being billed. So it's going to take a few minutes.
So that's just an item for discussion. It goes against, and I shared with the committee, and I'll share with the board, when we started this, there's two sort of pieces here. There's a qualitative piece, and then there's a quantitative piece. The qualitative piece is the piece that you can't put a price tag on, because that's the piece that's, I don't want to call it the hug, but it's the piece that you can't measure. Like Autumn had mentioned, having that social connection with kids, your peers, that go beyond the 20 kids that you went K through 6 with. I think as parents, we all want to see our kids grow and explore. But the quantitative piece, if the cost is substantial and the buy-in, like that's going to be an important question for the community to sort of decide as we move forward using the awesome flow chart, by the way, which I really do like, is to really design a program or the next committee to charge them with to say, hey, what's important to the community, the qualitative or the quantitative? And then I think that really kind of helps with the flow chart to say the community has spoken, qualitative or quantitative is more important. And that's the path that I think that we can add to the flow chart. Sorry.
So one thing I can add, and a couple of the members of the committee who aren't here, Jennifer Henneberry and Craig Wiley, they had some great ideas. And one of them, basically 8.4 FTEs would get you a basic middle school that would check off the boxes. You've got a middle school, go for it. But I don't, to your concern about quality, I don't think that would be a quality middle school in the sense that it couldn't offer everything. But Craig, I think it was Craig had an idea. What if we built an awesome middle school program and accepted tuition from neighboring towns? So that would solve some of the issues, but of course there's a lot of risk with that. But that was Andrew? Oh, sorry, Andrew. That was Andrew's great idea. Yeah.
So Peter, as a board, and Sarah, you're going to remember this from multiple years ago. That was something that actually came up as an option. How do we reduce our cost per pupil calculation, and opening up our doors, because at the time, back in 2000 and maybe 15, 16, there was capacity within inside this building to accept new kids. We were right around a census of 180. We're tricking down to 175. And so reaching out to local communities. The barrier that we had to that was what's after us, right? So you tuition to an outstanding program, which you guys did a great job this year. I can't stress that enough. But when you go through our program, and let's say it's 8th grade, then where do you go? Do you tuition up to Sohegan High School? Do you tuition back to your home district? That's the disconnect piece that we would have to sort of figure out. It would be great if we can continue that. We currently receive tuition students where the town basically reduces our cost per pupil calculation to the middle school. I think we have 3 or 4 of those, Christine?
Sorry, we're working on the tuition piece. I apologize. What did you say?
Reverse tuition students?
Oh, we were actually just saying that we have 2, I believe,
So 2.
reverse tuition students.
At a high point, we had 5 or 7, or do you recall a couple years ago?
Oh, maybe. Well, we have 2 more that just came in. Do you remember? Is it 4 total? Yeah, from Amherst. I think we were just looking at it.
Okay.
So we should be able to give you a firmer number.
And yeah, so we were pretty high there, and we opened up our doors to the Amherst community, and it wasn't necessarily well received, but some families did actually take us up on that offer, and I think they saw firsthand the wonders that go on inside this place. And I think you're 100% right, Andrew, that if we share that story in a more proactive way, we'd have the ability then to go ahead and add additional revenue to provide more services, to provide more options for our kiddos.
Andrew Stokenshire. Part of the consideration was if we got that message out in advance enough and Amherst decided not to build their school now or not to expand it now, maybe this would be an option for them to have more space in their school, and if they had too many students, to bring more here. And then there is continuation because they're Amherst students, they're going to go into the same high school as us. And this could let us create what I would consider a premium school where we had that extended math class and those other advanced non-extracurricular classes, right? That they currently don't get in the middle school in Amherst, which is what I called out with Ms. Brown, is I wanted to have that opportunity for my kids to be able to have those advanced math classes that they're not going to get at that middle school. And if we had expanded the grade school here, we could offer that here. And then it would give them a reason to want to tuition in. Make it good, got to sell it, right?
And we do have 4 total students from Amherst currently here. We had, 2 students we had as of last year. And then this year siblings came, so we gained 2 additional students. So we have a total of 4 Amherst students here for the tuition. You get like a credit, essentially. And Amy has a little bit of information, but it's a little challenging to tell from our budget software. I know this is something Katie Hannon always works on, but she can provide a little bit of an update, I think.
Yeah, so the tuition amount that is including the credit for AMS is 1251847, and I believe there's almost a $75,000 credit, so it would be 1.326 million.
The savings from the construction of the contract price, which, to be honest with you, we would be rolling into a bond issue for us. So I don't necessarily see that as being a savings, it would just be an equity stake. So if the savings is there, we're looking at that very small window of offering opportunities like Ms. Gardner said, or saving it and returning it to the tax base. So I think from that perspective, I think that's the quantitative measurement.
Is your name on that?
I'll shut it off.
I just wanted to thank the committee for the great work. I think we've all got a lot of homework, pardon the pun, a lot of thought starters here, a lot of options, and I think the next step is probably to figure out what is the next step with committee members, and because I think there's a lot more, and not to say that you didn't answer them, but there's a lot more questions and a deeper dive, research, homework, all that to, if we decide to go down one road or all 3 of the roads, to find out what the best solve is. But to Steve's point and others, I think it's good that, it's on the table, the dialogue started, and who knows, we may get more voices and participants to help, build out a plan, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now, whatever the number is. So, but thank you very much. It was excellent report. So thank you.
And I'd echo that, Pete, and I would piggyback on it as well and just say that I think part of the conversation remains with our colleagues and our friends in Amherst, that there is potential, let's say that they don't pass, their article coming up next month. It certainly would allow us to extend a conversation with them a little bit more deeply. So I want to just make that clear, like it's a collegial relationship that we have here. We feel it's a partnership. But we did feel as a board and do feel as a board that we had to commission this committee to look at it from our community perspective. So absolutely, thank you so very much for your attention to detail and for the great reporting and the great conversation that's going to come out of this. Your time and talent did not go unnoticed. And for anyone who is watching this meeting or viewing the replay, all of the committee meeting minutes and the report are listed on the SAU website. So all of this material is available for the public and the communities of Amherst and Mont Vernon to be able to review. I think we do want to engage in a discourse about it. And to me, the next step really is to look at what happens on the ballot in Amherst and likely to recommission a committee to dive deeper. And it sounds like that's your recommendation as well. I'm seeing nodding heads, yeah. Lots of potential for many different things here. Jess, Kristen, did you have anything you'd like to add?
And this may be just because I'm very, very new to this process, so this may be just a language issue that I'm not familiar with. But on the flow chart, and I love the flow chart, by the way, can Mont Vernon form a co-op with Amherst? And this was something that I was thinking about. Does this mean have some kind of agreement like with Sauhegan?
Yeah, so I skipped that over. That I thought of the things that surprised me the most, maybe that's the thing that surprised me the most, was how difficult it would be to make a co-op. And just so you understand, the co-op district of Sauhegan, it's actually a co-owned district. We have an equitable stake in that school, in that building. We own it in Mont Vernon as much as they do, for our stake. So we looked at, could we make a co-op middle school, or could we extend the Sauhegan additional grades? And there was something that maybe 3 years ago the school looked at, and the legal counsel said it can't happen. It can't happen because of one was teacher unions, but the second part had to do with the way the retirement is funded at Sauhegan. They're not, I don't quite understand it, but they're not part of the public school retirement fund or something. And you
Social
can't mix them.
Security. They don't participate in Social Security.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big difference.
So it was a huge obstacle. It's not like, hey, let's just add a couple of grades. It would
It would
yeah.
literally take an act of Congress, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. So.
I chaired that committee. It was called the Consolidation Committee, and it was a very deep and significant dive into the possibility of consolidating our districts, and those were the main obstacles. But there are minutes from all of those meetings if anyone's interested in seeing what we looked at and assessed. We did have quite a thorough legal review as well, and representatives from all districts were present. Teachers unions as well were involved, so it was a comprehensive review. And it felt like a big obstacle.
A further complication to that idea is we would have to buy into the middle school. And right now it doesn't appear to be worth much. Just the bricks are the only thing they're going to leave, but might be an opportunity.
And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So I understand like Sauhegan is different because of the union issue is different and the taxing issue is different, but we already have something existing with them. But the Amherst Middle School, we don't, but because it's both of them, that would form something different. Okay, I understand. And there's no way that we're paying capital expenses, but we still don't have a stake, and that would require the co-op. Gotcha. Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
I think if everyone was doing this from scratch, we would do it differently, right? I mean, that was what came out of the Consolidation Committee. Really, findings was if we were starting over, we would consider things differently and we would build it differently, but that's not the way it is today. So we make the best of it and we work together. Board members, what shall we do next? Shall we say thank you again? Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for your time in the process. Really, really valuable work that you did. We appreciate it. Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the report from this committee, and also put an agenda item on our April agenda to continue the discussion about reforming a new committee. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. And I do not believe we have any additional board business this evening. Yep, no need for a non-public. So I will thank everyone for their participation this evening. It is 9:14 and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.